The rising tensions between the U.S. and Russia and exploring how Russia's invasion of Ukraine is dramatically reshaping American foreign policy. From the conflict's origins to the latest updates in 2024, we'll cover the political, military, and economic dimensions of this evolving crisis. Background of the conflict. Let's rewind to 2014, when tensions between Russia and Ukraine first started heating up.
Russia has deliberately and repeatedly violated the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine.
That year, Russia made a move that shocked the world. It annexed Crimea, a region that was part of Ukraine. This act was widely condemned as illegal, and it set the stage for a prolonged conflict. Fast forward to February 2022, and things took a dramatic turn. Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Imagine a massive military force crossing borders and attacking cities. That's what happened. This invasion was not just a skirmish. It was a serious and aggressive act that drew the attention and concern of countries around the globe, especially the United States. The world watched as Ukraine, a nation fighting to defend its sovereignty, faced enormous challenges. Cities were bombarded and many Ukrainians were forced to flee their homes. The international community, led by the U.S., responded strongly, condemning Russia's actions and rallying to support Ukraine. The U.S. and its allies saw this invasion as a direct threat to international order and stability. They feared that if Russia succeeded, it might encourage other nations to take similar aggressive actions. So they stepped in, aiming to support Ukraine and put pressure on Russia to pull back its forces. In summary, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine began with the annexation of Crimea and escalated dramatically with the full-scale invasion in 2022. This conflict has since become a major issue on the global stage, drawing in many countries and shaping international relations. U.S. response and initial sanctions. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, the world was in shock. The United States, a key player on the global stage, had to respond quickly. Here's what happened next. Right away, the U.S. decided it was time to take action against Russia. The first move was to impose severe sanctions, which are like official penalties meant to punish a country and make it rethink its actions. These sanctions were targeted at some of the most important parts of the Russian economy. Freezing assets of major Russian banks. The U.S. started by freezing the assets of Russia's biggest banks. This means that the money and resources held by these banks outside of Russia were put on hold. Without access to these funds, the banks couldn't do business as usual, which put a big strain on Russia's economy. Banning the export of certain technologies. Next, the U.S. banned the export of certain high-tech goods and services to Russia. Think of it as a restriction on sending important technology like advanced computer systems and equipment that Russia needed for various industries, including its military. Sanctioning oligarchs and government officials. The U.S. also targeted the wealthy individuals and key officials who were close to Russian President Vladimir Putin. These people, known as oligarchs, had significant influence and wealth. By imposing sanctions on them, the U.S. aimed to cut off their financial resources and make them feel the impact of the conflict. These measures were designed to put pressure on Russia's economy and its leaders, hoping they would reconsider their aggressive actions. The goal was to weaken Russia's ability to continue the invasion and to force a change in its behavior. The sanctions were a clear signal that the U.S. would not stand by silently while Ukraine was under attack. They were just the beginning of a series of actions that would shape how the U.S. and its allies supported Ukraine throughout the conflict. Military aid to Ukraine. As the conflict between Russia and Ukraine escalated, the U.S. knew that actions beyond sanctions were necessary. Ukraine was facing a fierce and well-equipped opponent, and the U.S. decided to step up with military aid to support its ally. Here's how the U.S. has been helping Ukraine in its fight: providing advanced weaponry. One of the key ways the U.S. has supported Ukraine is by sending advanced weaponry. Imagine sending high-tech tools that can make a big difference in a battle. The U.S. provided Ukraine with powerful weapons like Javelin anti-tank missiles and HIMARS rocket systems. These weapons help Ukrainian forces defend against Russian tanks and artillery, giving them a fighting chance on the battlefield. Offering training and intelligence support. But it's not just about giving weapons. The U.S. also helped by providing training and intelligence. Think of it as a coach helping a team prepare for a big game. U.S. military experts trained Ukrainian soldiers on how to use the new equipment effectively. Additionally, the U.S. shared valuable intelligence, which means information about enemy movements and strategies, helping Ukraine stay one step ahead. Delivering humanitarian assistance. The conflict has created a severe humanitarian crisis, with many Ukrainians being forced to leave their homes. The U.S. didn't forget about this aspect. Alongside military aid, the U.S. provided humanitarian assistance. This includes helping displaced people by providing food, medical supplies, and shelter. It's like offering a lifeline to those who have lost everything due to the war. 2024 policy shift on long-range weapons. In 2024, there was a notable shift in U.S. policy regarding the types of weapons Ukraine could use. President Biden suggested lifting the ban on Ukraine using long-range weapons against Russia. Previously, there were restrictions on these types of weapons to avoid escalating the conflict further. But as the war continued, the U.S. considered this change to give Ukraine more options for defending itself and pushing back against Russian advances. In summary, the U.S. has been a major supporter of Ukraine through a combination of advanced weaponry, training, intelligence, and humanitarian aid. This support is crucial in helping Ukraine withstand the ongoing conflict and navigate the challenges it faces. Diplomatic efforts and international alliances. As the conflict between Russia and Ukraine continued, the U.S. knew that supporting Ukraine wasn't just about military aid. It also required a strong diplomatic push and building alliances around the world. Recent developments in 2024. As of September 2024, the situation remains volatile. Russian forces have intensified their offensive in the Donbas region, capturing several strategic locations despite Ukrainian resistance. In response, the U.S. has considered increasing military aid and lifting restrictions on long-range weapons for Ukraine. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces have launched counter-offensives in the Kursk region, applying pressure on Russian defensive positions. These developments have prompted the Biden administration to reassess its strategy continuously, aiming to balance support for Ukraine with the risk of escalating the conflict further. As the conflict continues, the U.S. remains committed to supporting Ukraine and upholding the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more in-depth analyses of global events. Humanitarian and cybersecurity concerns. The U.S. has also addressed the humanitarian crisis resulting from the war, providing significant aid to Ukrainian refugees and internally displaced persons. Additionally, the conflict has highlighted cybersecurity vulnerabilities, with both Russia and Ukraine engaging in cyber warfare. The U.S. has bolstered its cybersecurity defenses and supported Ukraine in its efforts to protect critical infrastructure from cyber attacks. Economic impacts and energy policy shifts. The conflict has had profound economic implications globally. The sanctions on Russia have disrupted global supply chains, particularly in energy markets. The U.S. has taken several steps to mitigate these impacts, increasing domestic energy production to reduce dependency on Russian oil and gas, working with allies to release strategic petroleum reserves, investing in renewable energy sources to diversify energy supplies. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's role. Secretary of State Antony Blinken played a key role in these diplomatic efforts. He was like a skilled negotiator working behind the scenes. Recently, he made headlines by accusing Iran of supplying ballistic missiles to Russia. This accusation added another layer to the diplomatic pressure. Blinken also coordinated new sanctions with the UK, ensuring that the international response remained strong and united. In essence, the US worked tirelessly to build a coalition of support for Ukraine. By strengthening NATO's defenses, coordinating sanctions with allies, engaging with countries around the world, and having key figures like Secretary Blinken lead the charge, the US aimed to isolate Russia and bolster Ukraine's position on the global stage. Coordinating joint sanctions with European allies. The US didn't act alone. It worked closely with European allies to impose joint sanctions on Russia. Imagine a group of friends deciding to take a stand together. By coordinating these sanctions, they aimed to increase the pressure on Russia and make it harder for the country to continue its aggressive actions. This united front made the sanctions more effective and sent a clear message to Russia. Engaging with countries in Asia and the Middle East. Beyond Europe, the US also reached out to countries in Asia and the Middle East. Think of it as trying to get more friends on board for a cause. The U.S. worked to isolate Russia diplomatically by encouraging these countries to support Ukraine or at least not support Russia. This global pressure helped to isolate Russia and limit its options. Here's how the U.S. worked to gather international support and put pressure on Russia. Strengthening NATO's eastern flank. The U.S. and its NATO allies took important steps to bolster their defenses in Eastern Europe. Picture this as adding extra guards to protect a fort. They deployed more troops and resources to countries near Russia, like Poland and the Baltic states, to show that they were ready to defend against any potential aggression. This move was meant to reassure these countries and deter any further moves by Russia.